It is the most famous predator in the planet's history, an icon of power and ferocity. For millions of years, it was the undisputed king. And then, it vanished. The story we've all been told is simple. A rock fell from the sky, and the tyrant fell with it. But when we examine the evidence, that clean, simple answer feels like a case closed far too soon. The truth is more complex and far more sinister. Now, let's open the case file on one of prehistory's greatest unsolved mysteries. Our investigation begins by profiling the victim, Tyrannosaurus Rex. This was not merely an animal, it was an ecological force, the final and most terrifying expression of theropod evolution. Standing over 12 feet tall at the hips and stretching 40 feet long, the Tyrant King was a walking fortress of muscle and bone. When we examine its anatomy, we're not just looking at a fossil, we're analyzing the specifications of a perfect killing machine. Its skull, a massive 4-foot weapon, housed jaws capable of delivering over 8,000 pounds of force, enough to crush the bones of its victims into splinters. This wasn't a predator that merely sliced flesh. It annihilated its prey. Its forward-facing eyes granted it superb binocular vision, the mark of a hunter that targets and pursues, while its advanced olfactory bulbs suggest a sense of smell that could track a meal from miles away. It was a creature engineered for utter dominance. For 2 million years, at the very end of the Cretaceous period, this apex predator reigned supreme across the island continent of Laramidia, what is now Western North America. But the kingdom it ruled was already showing signs of deep decay. The primary witness in this case, the fossil record itself, paints a picture of a world under immense stress. The great inland sea that once split the continent was receding, drastically altering the climate. The lush, subtropical paradise was becoming more seasonal, more volatile. We see in the rock layers of formations like Hell Creek that the floral communities were shifting, and most disturbingly, the diversity of other large dinosaurs appears to have been dwindling. This wasn't a sudden, unexpected death. The evidence suggests the king was ruling a dying world, a throne room whose foundations were already crumbling long before the sky began to fall. With the victim and the crime scene established, the investigation pivots to the perpetrators. The end of the Cretaceous was not a single clean event. It was a planetary assault. And when we analyze the forensic evidence left in the rock, 2 prime suspects emerge. Our first suspect is the one of legend, a cosmic assassin. Codenamed Chicxulub, this 6-mile-wide asteroid struck the Earth while traveling at over 40,000 miles per hour. For decades, this was just a theory. But in 1980, the investigation broke wide open. Scientists Walter and Luis Alvarez, examining the thin layer of clay that marks the boundary between the Cretaceous and Paleogene periods, found a stunning clue. A concentration of the element iridium hundreds of times higher than normal. Iridium is rare on Earth's surface but abundant in asteroids. It was a fingerprint, a calling card left at the scene of the crime, and we find it in the geological record all over the world. This discovery sent investigators on a global manhunt. Soon, other evidence came to light. The boundary layer was also filled with shocked quartz, sand grains fractured in a way that is only possible under the extreme pressure of a nuclear explosion or a massive impact, and tiny glass spheres called tektites formed from rock that was vaporized and flung into the atmosphere. The evidence trail was hot, and it ultimately led to a 110-mile-wide impact crater buried beneath the Yucatan Peninsula in the Gulf of Mexico. We had found the bullet wound. The impact itself was an event of unimaginable violence. The energy released was more than 1 billion times that of the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. A mega tsunami, thousands of feet high, scoured the coastlines of the Americas. Trillions of tons of vaporized rock and debris were blasted into space, only to rain back down across the globe, heating the atmosphere to the temperature of an oven and igniting continent-spanning firestorms. But the primary kill mechanism was the aftermath. The dust and soot from the impact and fires shrouded the planet in darkness, creating an impact winter that lasted for years. Sunlight was blocked, photosynthesis ceased, and the entire global food chain collapsed from the bottom up. For Tyrannosaurus Rex, a predator dependent on massive herbivores, it was a death sentence. The case seems open and shut. A clear culprit, a murder weapon, and a victim. But just when the file seems closed, our investigation uncovers a second suspect. A conspirator already at the scene, poisoning the world from within long before the assassin from space arrived. We turn our attention to India, to a geological feature known as the Deccan Traps. This is not a single volcano, but one of the largest volcanic provinces in Earth's history. For hundreds of thousands of years, straddling the end of the Cretaceous, this region bled lava. The scale is difficult to comprehend. Eruption after eruption buried an area the size of modern-day France in basalt lava, in some places more than a mile thick. This was a wound in the planet's crust that refused to heal. The motive here wasn't brute force. It was chemical warfare. These eruptions weren't just spewing lava. They were pumping catastrophic amounts of climate-altering gases into the atmosphere. We're talking about billions of tons of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide. When we analyze the geological and chemical evidence, we see the devastating effects. The sulfur dioxide would have created clouds of sulfuric acid, blocking sunlight and triggering short, sharp volcanic winters, while also causing toxic acid rain to fall across the globe. The carbon dioxide, a potent greenhouse gas, would have then caused extreme global warming, raising planetary temperatures and, critically, acidifying the oceans. The world's climate was being thrown into chaos, swinging violently between freezing and boiling. The fossil record shows that many marine ecosystems were already collapsing under this chemical assault. The Deccan Traps were a slow-acting poison, destabilizing the entire biosphere, weakening food chains, and pushing countless species to the brink. Crucially, the timeline is damning. The most massive pulses of the Deccan eruptions began roughly 300,000 years before the Chicxulub impact. The world that the Tyrannosaurus Rex ruled was not just a world with a crumbling foundation. It was a world being actively and systematically poisoned. So we are left with two catastrophic killers. One, a swift, brutal blow from the heavens. The other, a slow, insidious betrayal from the Earth itself. One was a sniper's bullet. The other was a poison with no antidote. The forensic evidence places both at the scene. This was no longer a simple homicide. This was a conspiracy. The only question left for this investigation is to determine the final sequence of events. Did one act alone? Or did they work together to bring down a king and his entire world? After reviewing all the evidence from the Planetary crime scene, the verdict is in. The death of Tyrannosaurus Rex and the end of its world was not the work of a single killer. The evidence overwhelmingly points to a conspiracy, a devastating two-pronged assault that pushed the global ecosystem past its breaking point. This was a perfect storm, a planetary murder plot executed with chilling precision. The investigation clearly shows that the Deccan Traps acted as the first assailant. For millennia before the final cataclysm, these colossal volcanic eruptions were the inside man, systematically poisoning the world that T-Rex ruled. The constant flood of volcanic gases created a chaotic and toxic environment. Acid rain stressed forests, while ocean acidification devastated marine life, the foundation of many food chains. The climate swung violently between greenhouse heat and volcanic winter, placing every living thing under immense pressure. The great herbivore herds that the Tyrant King depended upon would have dwindled, their numbers crippled by failing vegetation and a volatile climate. The kingdom was rotting from within. Tyrannosaurus Rex was still the king, but it was now ruling over a crumbling, poisoned empire with a severely weakened supply chain. The victim was already vulnerable, isolated, and fighting for survival in a world that was actively turning against it. With the world already on its knees, the second killer arrived. The Chicxulub asteroid was not an assassin striking a healthy victim. It was the executioner delivering the final, decisive blow to an ecosystem that no longer had the strength to fight back. The impact winter, the firestorms, and the tsunamis were more than this weakened biosphere could withstand. The food chains, already stretched to their breaking point by the volcanoes, snapped completely. For a hyper-specialized apex predator like Tyrannosaurus Rex, this was the end of the line. Its very size and power, the adaptations that had made it an invincible ruler, now became its fatal flaw. It was too large and required too much food to survive in the barren aftermath. The king was a victim of a conspiracy between the earth and the heavens. And so, we close the case file on the last of the Tyrant Kings. Its extinction was not a simple accident, but the result of a planetary 1-2 punch that even the mightiest creature in history could not endure. The story of Tyrannosaurus Rex is a profound and chilling lesson written in stone. No matter how absolute the power, no reign is forever, for all life is ultimately subject to the immense and unforgiving forces of the planet itself.